Because when we sit in these pews next to one another, we're all different. Some of you like Trump, some of you do not. Some of you are Republicans, some of you are Democrats. Some of you believe this, some of you believe that. We're all different. Everyone's different. We all have different opinions, beliefs. We vote differently. We behave differently. We're all different. We raise our kids differently. But guess what? We're in the same pews. Isn't that amazing? We come together each week next to one another to worship Jesus. Because that, at root, is who we are. John Wesley, the Anglican priest who in the 18th century founded the Methodist movement that gradually became a denomination. His picture, or his stained glass window, is in the very back on the top. You can see him preaching in the town square. But John Wesley set a great example when he said this: "Though we cannot think alike, may we not love alike? We may not be of one heart." Or he said, "May we not be of one heart, though we are not of one opinion. Without a doubt, we may. We may." Here is where the children of God unite, he says, regardless of our differences. Billy Graham, who just recently passed to heaven, his success of his ministry lay in his remarkable ability to keep the truly important thing front and center. He kept the main thing the main thing. He preached the gospel to all people, and he united people from all denominations. He never advocated for a particular church over another. He just preached Jesus. And all people, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Baptists, Methodists, Catholics, all of them, listen. My Irish Catholic grandmother actually took notes when she watched him on TV. I never saw her take notes in her Catholic church, but she took notes from Billy Graham because he encouraged people. He actually did this. He encouraged people to go back to the churches that they came from. He didn't really mind what denomination you came from, just go back and do it well. Whatever church you come from, go back and make disciples. Go back to your pastor. Go back to your family community, your church community, and bless it with your faith. Because Billy Graham's chief aim was just to make disciples. That was it. And he never let smaller matters or human systems get in the way. Now, that's what makes Christianity attractive. We would like to hear people say, look at how they love one another. But that's not always the case. See, what turns the world off is when they see how we fight among ourselves. And all of us, Christians, have done this down through the centuries. And if it weren't true, we wouldn't have so many denominations, so many different churches on our street corners. And on so many different fronts, we can fight and we can be divided. Just go to the Methodist Annual Conference in New York every year. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of conflict. There are certain people that wear these different colored t-shirts to advocate for their position. Who should be ordained? Who should not be ordained? Who can be married? Who cannot be married? We do have large fights, conflicts, and divisions in all fronts, in all churches. This has been happening from the beginning. You can read in the Bible that the early church did have a great concern for the poor, but there were some widows, a particularly vulnerable group in that time, who were being neglected in the daily distribution of food. And later on, our Apostle Paul, he had to write a ton of letters. Why did he write to the Corinthians and the Ephesians and the Thessalonians and the Colossians? Why did he write to the Romans? because he was constantly having to correct them. They were constantly getting it wrong. And so he would write these letters to try to build the church up and solve those problems. But guess what? The church continued to grow. We may not always get along. We may have differences of opinion when we sit in trustees or at church council meetings. We may not all agree with how we should or shouldn't do this or do that. But guess what? We continue to grow. Wow. How does that happen? Because it's not about us. It's about God and God's purposes. And he's going to see his will done with or without us. But, oh, what it is to be able to be working within God's will. That's when life is full. When we and God are in step, are in sync, life is full. We're on fire. That's when we take off and fly. There's this great quote from an evangelist, Arthur Blessed, who said, "I would rather die within the will of God than live outside of it." And that's it. It's God's will that you and I, that's how we live. One in heart and mind, sharing what we have so that there's no needy people among us, and we continue to talk about and testify to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is our defining moment. We're here because we're of one mind and heart. Maybe not in politics, maybe not in any other area, but definitely in the love of Jesus Christ. So maybe that early church was too good to be true. I don't think so. I think for many, many, many years there's always been problems. There will always be problems in the church. But one thing I do know is that when we can appreciate our church family and know one another for who we really are, that's when we get proof. That's how we know that your faith is real. Your faith is real every time our church opens those doors to a homeless person, a person that just has a need to be accepted and loved. It's proven every single time one of you goes the extra mile to make sure someone has a place to live, a place to eat, or just a place to belong. It's proven every single time a life is transformed. Every time we're willing to part with what we have to give it away to someone who needs it. Every time we forgive someone. Every time we make peace. When we give love or extend grace. That's a miracle. That's a miracle I want to be part of. That's what makes it exciting to be a member of this church. We just welcome in this sacrament of baptism our newest member, Ryan Dwayne, who's being amazingly great. We renew our own promises to be there for him as he grows up in our midst. And what we want to teach him first, we first want to teach him to be blind. Blind to wealth or poverty. Blind to intellectual ability or learning disability. Blind to all appearances, because what we want and desire for Ryan is 20/20 vision for every single soul who walks through our doors, for all the people that he has yet to meet. A sharp vision that allows him to see where others need, whether they need food or compassion or understanding or tolerance or kindness or love. You and I are this little boy's first teachers in the ways of the faith. Let us be great teachers, awesome teachers. Like I said, not by being perfect, not by ever never making a mistake, but by being faithful to who we are in this family of believers. So that no matter what Ryan encounters in his life, whatever difficulty, whatever hardship, time of confusion or pain, Ryan will know, because of you, when he looks up, he'll only have one thing to say: my Lord and my God. Amen.
Amen.